What's up, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with NIO, Tesla, SPY, and the overall markets. I'm going to break down why it's going to be a very interesting week ahead of us as NIO has big things towards the end of this week coming out, not to mention some new developments on the charts and such. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offering is very soon, just about 2 weeks from now. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So, NIO has been dipping a bit, approaching this support around this 4.3 zone. We'll have to see if we get some kind of big bounce or not. It's approaching 4.68, which is where our key EMAs happen to be. But otherwise, we're just stuck in the middle, going back and forth and back and forth. Now, I want to say that yes, NIO does look a little bit weaker. It's on a bit of a downtrend here, and it may remain very, very tight for the next couple of days. But we have NIO days towards the end of this week. It's going to be on the 21st of December, at least in China. And then we also happen to have their big announcements for their deliveries coming out towards the end of the year. So look for some volatility once all that data comes out. That may cause a big move for NIO, so wait for that. Until then, we do have some news to talk about. So NIO has reached about 60 million in their battery swap services. That's a very, very big milestone that they have achieved. I think it's a great piece of news because it just goes to show how much they've been growing for the last couple of years. So it just goes to show how well they're doing, at least on that end. And on top of that, I think that this overall network is going to continue to grow as time goes on. They're growing in other countries, especially in many of those European countries. And I think that this is going to create a new world where, people won't have to wait as much or wait too long to charge their vehicles. They could just swap the batteries in a very, very quick manner of time. And that's going to be very useful in many European countries where these battery swap options are becoming more and more accepted. And as more people start to look into them, I think that this could lead to a lot more sales. This is a nice marketing tactic that could be used. I think it's a great piece of news to see this growth. Now, we had about 31 million in volume. And then I also want to call out that the majority of these analysts are still a little bit more bearish on NIO. They're giving like neutral slash sell ratings because the share price is looking a little bit weaker, at least for the shorter term. Now, the short term does have some weakness, but the long term still remains very, very bullish. I still say that because I am open to the possibility of the hardships that could be coming for the company. There's going to be some difficulties in terms of getting those sales up and then getting closer to profitability. So that's what's holding them back, at least thus far. So for the shorter term, that is what holds them back. But I still believe there's going to be potential, at least for the long term, for them to make some big improvements. I want to see a big improvement in not only their sales, but whatever they announced during NIO Day for their ambitions. And that can have a big effect on the share price. On top of this, when it comes to the economic calendar, just know that the S&P Global Composite PMI, it remains in a very, very interesting place. We have all this data coming out at 9:45, a.m. We have the S&P Global Composite PMI, the Global Manufacturing PMI, and Services PMI data at 9:45. So watch and see what that leads to, at least as time goes on. On top of this, when it comes to other factors, just know that we have very, very minor earnings coming out. We had Red Cat announcing earnings after close. Then for Tuesday, we have a couple more. Everything else is going to be more minor for Wednesday and Thursday, just more retail. So just keep that in mind. And last but not least, excuse me, we have the Fear and Greed Index. This is currently at neutral, stuck in the middle, not really doing much. Momentum is greedy right now, not really making much of a shift. The puts and call option ratio is at greed. It is trying to increase right here. This could be a sign that there might be more put buying than before. And we're just waiting for the VIX to make its next move. Anyways, what do I see for NIO? So NIO is on a downtrend right here. We'll have to see if we can try to base here. I do see a risk of this potentially dipping lower. So look for a little rebounds tomorrow. It's about that 4.6 area. If we don't surpass that, there's going to be risk of this kind of coming back up and then down. And we could be on our way down to about 4.3 ultimately looking at this trend. We look a bit more bearish looking at the PPO, and the fact that the trend is more bearish with us making lower highs and lower lows makes me suspect that this could continue to dip. Look for a bounce and a dip as the most likely cases, and this could continue to fall towards 4.3. So please keep that in mind, guys. There's going to be a risk of some downside, and then we'll just have to see how things end up going. For other factors out there, we also happen to have SPY in a very interesting place. SPY is kind of trading sideways here, but there's going to be a risk of this dipping a little bit lower, all the way down towards the support around the 601 area. So if that were to fail, we could be dipping closer to about that 600 zone. So we'll just have to see how things end up going. We're kind of stuck in between these zones, between supply and demand, going back and forth and back and forth. We could be dipping lower towards that 602 area. And if that fails us, we'll be dipping back down to 600. So just keep that in mind. Now, going into tomorrow, We haven't lost our support at 602 yet, so this makes me think that there could be an attempt to rebound in the morning. We might see a test of 605. We'll have to see if SPY could break past that or not. I do want to call out that we had a high here. We came down, made a lower high, and we're just continuing to do that. So this could attempt to rebound, but then there's going to be a risk of us turning back down and making our way back down towards the lower 600s. So look for a rebound, a test of 605 or so, then a rejection for a dip as the most likely possibilities. We'll have to see what happens after that. For ES, we're on a bit of a downtrend, making lower highs right here, which is not the best of signs. There might be a test of 6.4, 6040, excuse me, one more time. But then this might attempt to rebound back up towards our EMAs around the 60-60 area. So it might be a little dip and a bounce. And we'll see if we get a rejection. Like I said before, we're making lower highs, which makes me suspect there is going to be a risk of some downside. So it could rebound and then start to dip. So just be careful with the potential dip that could be forming. Nvda is not looking as good. This is looking a little bit weaker on the 4-hour. It might dip, excuse me, a little bit lower towards like 132 before it tries to bounce. So look for an attempt to rebound in the morning, then a retest of 132, and we'll see if we bounce off that or not. We're very close to where our demand zone is between 132 and 134. So it might dip a little bit closer to 132 before it attempts to rebound. So just keep that in mind. For Bitcoin, Bitcoin's on a very, very nice uptrend so far. We'll have to see if we break out from here to get closer to 104,000. If that breaks, we'll be pushing even more. If we lose 101,583, we'll be dipping back down to 100,319. So we'll see if that ends up being the case or not. For other factors out there, we happen to have Tesla. Tesla's on a very, very strong uptrend. There's no sign of this getting stopped yet. So what could happen is we could pop here, then come back down to where our breakout area is around that 430 area. So it might pop a bit, then come back down before it tries to bounce again. But it could be on its way up close to about 450 as it remains a lot more bullish. So overall, it's bullish. There's no sign of it slowing down yet, and it's looking very strong. The QQQ looks more bullish, making higher highs and higher lows, but we had a high here and we came down. We might be looking for a retest of 526, and we'll have to see if we bounce off that or not. In order to turn bearish, you want to see it lose that to start dipping back down to closer to the lower 520s. Hasn't done that yet, so I think that remains quite elevated. It's doing a good job at holding above 530. Might retest 526 before it tries to balance, but it's still looking more bullish. For Aapl, we might retest 246 if that fails us. We could be tipping close to about 244, so we'll just have to see how it goes, if we bounce or not. And NQ might be retesting 21,692 before it attempts to rebound, so just keep that in mind as well. For the IWM Russell 2000, we're on a bit of a downtrend right here. We could be tipping closer to about this support around 231.04, and we'll see if we bounce or not. So keep that in mind, at least as far as things are going. For Coinbase, Coinbase is completely range bound right here, so there's going to be a risk of this tipping closer to about 306, and if that fails us, we have a gap to fill back down to 303. For Amazon, Amazon is dipping right here. We do have this imbalance down here to fill. If we lose 226.75, we could be dipping closer to about 225. Meta is also kind of stuck in the middle. We might attempt to rebound for about 625, and then we'll see if you reject or not and start dipping closer to about like 610. So give it some time. It might attempt to rebound a bit. Microsoft looks a little bit weaker here. It has to hold 446, otherwise it's going to be at risk of coming down to 442. So it could rebound and start dipping. I do see a possible left shoulder head and right shoulder that could lead to some downside. And then Google has the same thing, looking a little bit bearish here. We might be dipping close to about 188 to 190 before it tries to bounce. But look for some more downside. So I think that the market might see a small dip there. The market might rebound a bit in the morning before it starts to slow down as time goes on. And it's going to have a negative effect on NIO. NIO might retest 4.6, but if it rejects off that, it could continue to dip and make its way down to about that 4.3 area. So look for an attempt to push for 4.6 tomorrow morning. If we don't break past that, we could just dip. And we could be slowly on our way down to about 4.3. I would like to see us get the dipping done with before NIO Day and before the end of the year deliveries, because hopefully we could be making a big move afterwards. But anyways, that's it for my video. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a good rest of your day, and peace out.